Everybody, my name is Kenneth Candy. I'm a grateful alcoholic. It's good to be here. Good to be sober today. Wow, if I'd known this minute was going to be here, I don't know if I'd showed up or not. But no, it's always an honor and privilege to be of service, to be asked to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank you, Daniel, for asking me to be here. I think I was here just over a year ago and spoke. And it's always an honor and privilege to be asked to come back, because back in the day before I ever got sober, I was always used to stay, people telling me to stay away, don't come back, take that one you got with you. And so I'm very grateful today to be asked to come back and do anything, especially stuff like this. I probably do need to make some amends next door. I went to the church over there, went across a couple medias and stuff like that to get over here. GPS, I was just following it. And, but we made it, thank you. Got a sobriety date, December the 10th, 2006. I have a home group, which is the Shallotte group in Shallotte. We meet there every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5:30, if anybody out that way. I think we have a meeting guide app, and we can look you up or look us up and come join us. We got a pretty good group there. It's small, but I've been a home group member for that group now since August of last year. And honor and privilege to be there, be part of that group. I have a sponsor. I don't know how many of y'all have sponsors here. I found it very beneficial for me to have a sponsor. I don't have to worry about taking inventory no more. He does it for me. As a matter of fact, he's here tonight, and I'm sure he'll be taking inventory tonight. So anyway. Oh, Lord, let's see where am I at. I think that's all I should mention. I was born in Pasquotank County. I don't know if any of y'all know where that's at, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I came from a pretty dysfunctional family. I was the youngest out of 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I thought I was different. As growing up, my mom and dad both, there was a lot of alcohol in the home. I seen a lot of very unhappy scenes growing up as a child. We moved from Elizabeth City. We moved down to a little town called Thomasboro, which is outside of Calabash, North Carolina, and was there for just a short while. And then we moved to a little town called Longwood, and that's where I started having some memories of early childhood, where alcohol and other substances was very present. We moved side of some family. My family there, my uncle and my aunt, they had a couple of older sons, and my older brothers and all, they hung out and drank and partied and done a few things. And I remember watching them and looking at them, and I remember just because they had girlfriends and doing other stuff and motorcycles and stuff like that, and I wanted to be like them. And I was not too interested in doing some other stuff at the time. I remember my family next door, they were old school. They they made their own wine and liquor and stuff like that. And I remember my first drink was, I was getting ready to get on the school bus. I was in 6th grade. I was around 10 years old. And my cousin, he invited me next door to catch the bus, and he had I think it was Ezra Brooks. Only y'all know what that is, but it was 90 proof bourbon. And I took my first drink, and I didn't like it. I went to school, got sick, and I remember swearing off I probably wouldn't drink no more of that stuff ever again. And some time went by, and I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I remember I got a little tap on my bedroom window one night, and a little young neighborhood friend, female, she invited me, because I had some transportation at the time. I had a 4-wheeler, and so she invited me to sneak out and go riding, and we did. And I got introduced to some beer at the time, and I take my second drink. And we done a few things that young girls and young boys do, and I tell you, for 19 solid years, that was pretty much what it was all about. So the drinking and the sex and stuff like that, and partying. Now my family, back up a little bit. I remember after I got an experience in alcohol and liked the taste and liked the effect that it was producing within me, I remember one day they went over to my uncle's shed and they had this barrel. And two of my uncles was in there and they were told us to go gather some pears. They were making some wine. And my cousin, he said, good. He said, well, let's help them. He said, because in about a few weeks it should be ready. And I remember the day that it was ready. I remember getting off the school bus, and I remember seeing my uncle. He was passed out in the yard. I thought he was dead. And I ran over and checked him, and I could smell the alcohol on him before I ever got up there to him close enough. And then my cousin, he was getting off the bus at the time. And he ran over there. We checked him out and realized that he'd been drinking. He was drunk. And he said, oh, yeah, the wine's ready. So, oh, yeah. So he said, go home and get whatever you can to put some in. Let's go steal some for you. And my other uncle, he was passed out too. So I went home and poured out all of Mom and Daddy's milk, Clorox, whatever I could find to do it to get some alcohol. I forgot how much we stole. So therefore, there was another combination. I started stealing, started drinking, partying, all that whole combination. So we ended up stealing a bunch of wine and having a party. And I can't recall. I think I pretty much was in a blackout after that. I remember we drank that wine for quite a long time. I still remember today exactly what it tastes like. And it tastes like Dawn dishwashing liquid. I never could figure out why it tasted like that. But then again, it dawned on me. I said, they were drunk when they made it, so they didn't get the barrel clean. They left a little bit of Dawn dishwashing. So, trust me, it had a unique taste. Anyway, things took off from there. I was going to school, started getting involved with activities with other friends and stuff, and drinking and doing a few other things, and got all the way up to about high school. And just before I went into high school, I met this young girl and at the beach, and I was interested in her, and she liked to drink too and do other stuff, and so we kind of clicked. And then as time I quit school around just before I turned 16 years old. I got myself in some trouble. I remember the first day at high school, I got knocked off smoking cigarettes in the boys' bathroom, so they gave me some in-school suspension. I don't know if that's what they used to call it back then. I'm not sure what they call it now, but I know it was almost like being in jail or being in prison. They had a little cubicle about like this and had a little thing around it, and I couldn't see. And they gave me piles of books for homework for the whole week. And I figured it'd be wise that I'd quit, because my dad, he was a commercial fisherman, and he worked for himself. He was self-employed. And I used to go with him in the summer months and make a little extra money and done okay doing that. So my idea was I'd go and quit school and go to work, and I wouldn't have nobody tell me what to do, And I tell you, that was another thing for a good alcoholic like me. I ain't never liked the idea of somebody telling me what to do, so I like that. So I skipped 79 days straight. I decided I wouldn't go back. I'd skip school. And me and this young girl, we was drinking and doing other stuff, and I was really interested in that until I finally got caught, and my mom and dad got involved. Some law was involved, and threatened to take them to jail and some charges and stuff like that. And so I ended up going back. I stayed, best I recall, 3 days, and that's when I turned 16. And when I turned legal age, I quit and I never went back. And shortly after that, I started getting in trouble. I got caught driving on without a license, driver's license. And I figured as long as my truck or vehicle would start and run, who needs a driver's license? And so I ended up, I'm hard-headed. I ended up getting caught 13 times driving on no license. So had a hard time with that. And anyway, things started progressing. My disease of alcoholism, I kept drinking. My drinking kept getting worse and worse. And I was having some good times too, man. Before she became my wife, I remember having a talk with her, and I was like, I think I'm having problems with this other stuff. And I don't think I'm quite an alcoholic yet, but I know I'm having problems over here, and I really think that I might need to look into that and check it out, because I just feel like I can't stop. And so she came up with a plan, an idea, and I thought it was pretty wise at the time. So she made the conscious decision that it'd be good if we got married. I don't suggest that for anybody. That's not a solution. So I started my first really meaningful relationship. So we ended up getting married, and anyway, we stayed married there for about 4 years before we got a divorce. And in between that, I still was drinking. That, being I weren't doing other stuff, that kind of took off, and things kept getting worse over there. So problems kept piling up, more charges. I was doing things, and what I discovered with me is that once I drank, not only did I become an alcoholic through my drinking career, I became a magician as well. I made things disappear, mine and yours. So that's what started happening. And I come up with ideas. I said, well, these people are insured. It makes it okay. The insurance is going to take care of it. Why not? It was available. They left the keys in it and stuff like that. So I take it and take off. And anyway, problems kept piling up, kept getting worse and worse. And then my wife, she said, listen, we got, things is not working out here. Well, we need to do something else. I think if we have a baby or child, that's probably going to help. You need some more responsibilities. I thought it was okay, so we done that, and I don't suggest that as well. It didn't work for me. So we had a daughter together, and I remember going to the hospital during the delivery, and I remember leaving the hospital, and for a man having a child, you got to reward yourself with a drink, right? That's exactly what I done. And I remember on the way home, I had full intentions of only having one, just rewarding myself with one. I mean, what's one beer going to hurt? So I drank me a beer, and then things kind of took off again. And it got so bad so rapidly quick because at the time I was trying to control my drinking. And anytime you got something going on in your life, you got to try to control. It's already been out of control. That's what I was been told. So my drinking had been out of control for a while. And once I drank that beer, I think it was 2 days later before I ever got back home. And when I got back home, I'm here to tell you, my wife was not too proud of me. And so she packed up everything and she left, and she never came back. So she filed for a divorce. And my idea was, at the time, I thought, well, this is great. Here I am, a single man now. I can do what I want to do. So I did. We started drinking and partying. That cousin that turned me on to my first drink, he was separated from his wife at the time. So we decided we'd hit the bars. We started working together, and we started partying together. And we were going to nightclubs and doing, all that stuff. And things kept getting worse. I ended up getting a DUI. I was in and out of jail quite often, and but before that happened, before she divorced me, she said my first detox. She took me to my first detox in Wilmington. It's called the Oaks. It's between a detox and mental health place. If anybody's going to be crazy, that's the place to go. It's real nice there. They got carpet on the floor, on the walls, and everything else. There, color televisions, everything. I ended up staying there 6 days, and I remember that night when I walked in there, I swore up and down that it was her fault why I was there. And every time after that. And but it was funny because one day I realized, I said, it seems like to me I'm always on the side of the door that ain't got no knob on it. Everybody else is on the other side. And I had to do an inventory of that. And so anyway, we ended up getting divorced, and I hooked up with him, and I ended up meeting this other lady, and through another friend, and got interested in her. She didn't drink like I did. As a matter of fact, she told me right out the gate she thought I had a drinking problem. I didn't think so. I only drunk beer. I was not a liquor drinker like my mom and my dad, and that was different, what I thought. Now, I've been sober for a little while, and I just discovered that beer is alcohol. But I had in my mind I could drink a couple beers and still get by and be okay. But it's just not true, not with somebody like me. I met this wife number 2. At the time, she was, I thought it'd be wise to marry her. She was a stripper. And so I don't suggest that either. So that didn't work out. Which we actually did stay together for almost 7 years, and it started out okay, and then all of a sudden it just kind of rapidly took off for the worst. After about about 7 treatments later, somewhere along in there, if I remember, my record was 9 treatments, several detoxes. I developed ideas that I could go to treatment and stay long enough, and I'd become a sober alcoholic. I stayed at one so long I became office manager. Still would not work. I decided I was going to take a leave and come home for a week, and got drunk on the way home. Just wouldn't work. Now, I had been introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous at that time. When I was at the Oaks in Wilmington, my first AA meeting was there. I didn't understand anything that y'all were talking about. I heard something about meetings, and I remember they talked about Wilmington Treatment Center, inpatient. I figured if I'd spent that kind of money that it cost to go there, to be sure I was going to get sober. They was going to give me some kind of cure, and that didn't work out either. I went to the inpatient and outpatient, still wouldn't work. Started going to AA meetings down at Grissetown on Highway 17. Some of y'all may have known about that meeting down there. It's pretty big. And I remember going there, and I'd have alcohol in the truck and a little something to smoke in the ashtray. I'd go to that meeting, and I would think I'd go there and hang out, and I'd become a sober alcoholic. I was looking for something to kind of regulate my drinking, teach me how to drink, more so not drinking at all. And I'd go there, and I could go easily find somebody just as sick as I was, if not sicker, to come ride with me afterwards. And I remember leaving that meeting, and never could pick up a 30-day chip. I had a pile of white chips, and probably had enough I could probably shingle this church. And I thought that I could go there and hang out and not do anything and become a sober alcoholic. And I'd find somebody to ride with me, and we would leave that meeting, and there was a stoplight maybe a mile and a half from that meeting. And we'd pump a top, and we'd throw our coins out the window and go straight to Myrtle Beach and go party and stuff like that. And talk about how good the meeting was and how much we got out of it. Insane stuff. But at the time, now I realize that I did get a lot from it, and I'll get into that. At the time, I just didn't think it was working. And I went there and hung out for a while. Never got a sponsor. I pretty much sponsored myself. That's another suggestion I do not suggest. Don't try sponsoring yourself. And I did. And things kept getting worse. I done that for maybe 2.5, 3 years. Problems kept piling up. I started doing a little bit more serious crimes. In and out of jail, probation, violating that. People started nicknaming me Houdini. They couldn't figure out all them charges I was getting and not going to prison. My family knew some people, and they knew some people, and so forth and so on. So I got out of a lot. Me being the child, the baby out of my family, I used that to my advantage quite often, as often as I could too. And it worked for a while. Then it kind of run out. So ended up getting, I didn't want a divorce at the time. I ended up catching a little small prison sentence. They told me, they gave me a deal 16 to 20 months. And so I went to prison for the first time. I remember telling myself, I said, well, this is it. Tuba Shore, if I go to prison, that's the end of the road there. I got to quit. There's no way I can continue on the path that I was on at the time. I went to prison, stayed 17 and a half months. I went to Craven Correction process, left from there, went to Carteret Correctional. I ended up staying 14 and a half months at Carteret Correction. I went to 2 AA meetings there during that 14 and a half months. The first time I went, I heard they had cookies, so I went there for the cookies. And then the next time, it was for the air conditioning. I call it the AC AA meeting. Because the prison didn't have AC, and they had AC where the meeting was being held. So I went there for that. Nothing ever changed. February the 22nd of 2005, I walked out of that prison institution with full intentions of never going back. I didn't like nothing that was going on in there. I didn't like having to wear another man's underwear in there, and so forth and so on. And I'd swore off. I swore off. Big Book talks about swearing off with and without a solemn oath. And that's what I'd done. My dad and my brother picked me up from the prison gate, like I said, February 22nd of 05 at 7 a.m. that morning. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, I rewarded myself with another drink, thinking things was going to be different. And they were. I can assure you, they were worse. A lot worse. Next morning was kind of like unforgettable. I remember it seemed like I had made up in my mind. I said, if I go back to doing what I've been doing that got me that prison sentence, you know what? I'm going to give up. I'm not going back. And I swore off I would never go back. And so my drinking and gotten way out of hand, out of control, right along with some other things. The charges kept piling up more and more. Went from a lot of times from misdemeanor to felonies. I stayed out for 15 and a half months. 15 and a half months later, I found myself standing before a judge. I had 42 felony charges. I don't even know how many misdemeanors. And they gave me probation. I'd gotten probation because my family had put up so much money. And of course, they still knew some people. I walked out and told myself, I said, well, that's it. I can't drink no more. I know I can't drink no more. And I white-knuckled it for about 15 days. And before my first restitution payment came, which was 29 days later, I had violated my probation for one curfew violation. I weren't home at 7 o'clock. And I stood before a judge, and the judge looked at me and said, if you violate any of these conditions from this order, drinking alcohol, doing any controlled substance of any kind, curfew violations, anything like that, I can assure you, we're going to put you away for 128 months. I knew that. There wasn't no question about it. But see, with an alcoholic like me and my alcoholic thinking and tendencies, all that kind of got blocked out 15 days later after walking away. And I decided, I said, you know what, this ain't worth it. Just white knuckling. I can't go without taking another drink. So I picked up another drink. 14 days after that, I was standing back before them again, violated from breaking the curfew. And I can assure you, they gave me the whole 128 months, and my knees buckled. I never thought in a million years that would ever happen to me. And in between all that, my dad, he had passed away. My dad, he was like a good close friend of mine. And so I was going through that. I ended up going, they arrested me, took me out, escorted me out of the courtroom. They put me in a padded room with pad on the walls, the ceiling, had nothing in it, had one hole in the floor, and that was it. I stayed in there about 6 days before a van came, and there was 9 guys on it. They put me on that van and took us to Burgaw, Pender Correctional. Those 9 guys got off, and I stayed on the van. And I knew right then I got this sick feeling in my stomach. I knew, I said, this ain't going to be good here. And my dad always prophesied. He said, son, if you don't slow down or stop, there ain't but one or two things going to ever happen to you. Either me or your mom's going to have to bury you, or they're going to put you away for the rest of your life. He said, now you keep on, and I can assure you they got somewhere for you. One of these days you're going to wake up and you're going to be at the big house. How true that was. Because I went on to Raleigh Central Prison. I don't know if any of y'all know about anything about that place, but that's what they call the big house. And I went in there, and it was an experience I won't never forget. I went inside that institution. I was greeted by two of the biggest officers men I've ever seen before with shackles and chains. And they come escorted me, took me through an intake, and we went down through this tunnel that had a yellow line down the center. And I was escorted down to a dorm that was a F unit, and I was processed on the old death row. I went into a cell, and I won't never forget that cell number. If I lived to be 100, I was in cell FU 111. I think it was trying to give me a message right out the gate. That's where I had my spiritual awakening at, I can assure you. I went in that cell that night, and that was December the 8th, 2006. Remember my sobriety date is December the 10th, 2006. I got in that cell that night. It was raining. There was a hole burnt into a little piece of plexiglass that was about 4, maybe 5 inches wide, maybe 12, 13, 14 inches long. And I could peek through that hole, and I could see Western Boulevard straight across from Raleigh Central Prison. And that red light was there, and I was watching that light change in and out. And I remember the water running down the walls because the roof leaked. And it would run down my wall, and the walls was inside that cell was shaped like eggs. They were oval shaped where the concrete was pushed in. They were so thick when they were building it. And I remember watching that water run down the floor, and it had run all over my clothes because I just come in that night, you know. I had an experience where I was having suicidal thoughts. All I could think about was 128 months. I didn't know how long that was, didn't want to think about how long that was. I know it was too many months, too many years for me to figure out. And I knew I couldn't, or felt like I couldn't do it. So I was having all these thoughts in my mind. I remember seeing that water run down the floor, run out the door. And I remember that door, they had run by air. And I remember that air, it sounded something similar like this. It went shh, bam. And when that door bam, I still hear that echo rings through my head. I still have nightmares about it. And I remember when that door closed, reality set in. And I remember it was over. I remember I went on to the bitter end. I went to any lengths. And it wasn't that night, it was the next night. I remember crying out to the God of my understanding. I'm not religious, but I do believe. I remember that night, and I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And I remember getting on my knees, and I just simply said, God, please help me. Because I didn't want to die. And I knew if I stayed in that institution with the attitude that I had, I wasn't going to live there much more longer. And the only thing I know how to describe it was like a warm, comforting blanket. I remember there was like something told me, whispered me in my ear. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, that things was going to be okay. And it's going to be all right. And the next day, December the 10th, a young man who said he knew me, and I didn't know him from Adam's house cat, said that, he said, come on, let's go to an AA meeting. And I said, Bud, the last thing that I'm thinking about is an AA meeting with 128 months. And I'm 2 days on it in Central Prison. He said, come on, let's go. He said, it sure beats sitting in this cell. And the thought came, and I was like, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe it is. I've been trapped up in here 2 days. And I went to my first AA meeting there, and there was a young man who was tickled to death to see us. And he said, thank God y'all here, we can have a meeting now. And the young guy was 27 years old. He had two life sentences. And I remember him sharing, and we done some readings, and I had, my reading was, there's a solution. And I remember reading that part of that, the big book, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Says, you know what? Maybe there is a solution. Just maybe there is a solution. I knew so hardly I'd never tried Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been all around it, but never been in it, never got involved, never followed none of the suggestions. And so anyway, I had an awakening there, or a spiritual experience. And the young guy shared, and I put myself in his shoes. I, for the first time, related with what he had to share and could identify rather than compare. And I put myself, I said, you know what? I could have easily be in that same situation today. And only by the grace of God that I wasn't. Only by the grace of God that I wasn't. I went back to my cell, and I remember just crying out and asking God for more help, guidance, and direction. And I became willing to go to any lengths to try to get sober. And that's the reason why that's my sobriety date. Now, I hadn't had a drink, I don't know, a month or so prior to that. But prison only done that for me. They locked me up. I couldn't get to one at the time. I probably would have been drinking. And I ended up shipping from there. I went from Raleigh to Wayne Correctional. I figured it'd be wise. They had treatment there. I was over on the population side. I remember they gave me a job working in the kitchen, washing dishes. And I remember washing dishes in there for about the third day, and I broke down, and I was weeping, crying, just couldn't take it. I was back in the block, and there were some guys in there passing some stuff out in some bags, and I wanted it, and I knew it was around, and I knew there was that temporary escape. I could find that in that. And I knew something told me if I got my hands on any of that, or the buck that was going around, the alcohol, the homemade stuff in there, that chances are I wouldn't ever make it out of prison alive. And I remember just begging and pleading for help. I remember it was funny. I walked in the block, and there was a guy, a good friend of mine, a guy named Buzz. Buzz was in the block, and he had an AA big book, and him and another guy, Dwight, was reading. And I waited for them to quit reading. I walked over to them, and I asked Buzz, I said, how's a man go about getting some help or getting treatment next door? And he told me how. He said, write this letter. It says, there's a guy over there named Steve Mitchell. He said, you write him. He says, he'll help you if you think you got a drinking problem. I said, ain't no question about that. So I wrote a short page. I mailed it to him through the in-house mail. And I got a call over the intercom the next day. It was Steve. I went and talked to Steve. Steve thought it'd be wise if I go to treatment. And I said, well, listen, I said, just one question. I said, what am I supposed to be looking for through treatment? Because I've been 9 times. And I've always seen, I think my ideas was I could go for 30 days, 65 days, 120 days, ever how long treatment was, and I'd come out and I'd be okay. I was looking at treatment as a solution. He said, absolutely not. He said, treatment's the discovery. He said, discover whether or not you're an alcoholic. And that was the experience that I had on December the 10th. I knew right then, I had looked back, done my own inventory, and looked back and seen where I took that one drink, that one beer, had got me where I was currently at. That was my way of thinking. Because I don't know about any of y'all, because once I pour alcohol in this system, I'm capable of doing anything to anyone in the right conditions. And so me and Steve had talked, and I went through the 65-day program there. I ended up leaving. I went to Hope Correctional. I don't know if any of y'all got plans to go into prison, but if they say you go into Hope Correctional, tap out, kick, stomp, curse, scream, do whatever. You don't want to go there. That's a bad place. And it was just run down terrible. It was just a dungeon. Ended up going there, staying a couple months, and I'd been around, been through treatment enough, and I tried to get involved and go to AA meetings and introduce myself everywhere I went. I ended up leaving Hope. Went from Hope to Columbus Correctional. I got to Columbus Correctional, and God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself there. I stayed 4 days. I ended up knowing one of the officers that was there from the street, and I ended up getting shipped, and I went to Morrison Correctional. I got to Morrison Correctional. I met this guy, some of y'all might know, a guy named Tom I. And Tom I was at our introduction, our orientation meeting that we had at the institution at the time, and we went through that orientation, and then Tom, he had spoke. He said, very familiar words, I'll never forget it. He said, if you think alcohol had contributed or had anything to you being here, we offer a solution. And the solution is in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you think alcohol had anything to you being here, then come join us and see what we're all about. And I went over and talked with him, and had the honor and privilege. I ended up staying at Morrison for about 4 years. And that's where I met a lot of my heroes in AA. I got a lot of heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous. Tom I is one of them. Wallace B is one of them. Daniel's one of them. And I can't say what those guys done for me. And what they done, they showed me, and a guy named Richard Page, he became my sponsor. Some of y'all may know him, or have known him. And they offer those suggestions about sponsorship, how the program worked, and their experience. And I started getting involved there. Ended up getting a temporary sponsor. First time I went through the steps was through a workshop with Tom and Richard. A situation happened with a visit that I had gotten. I ended up getting pushed back some. I was right in the middle of doing a 5th step. I didn't know it at the time. I was supposed to be doing a 5th step with Daniel, and it didn't work out. Ended up getting another temporary sponsor, a guy named Jeffrey, and Jeffrey, his sponsor was Richard, and Jeffrey ended up getting shipped out, and Richard came. It was a Wednesday night meeting, and Richard came up to me. He says, "I understand you've been working with Jeffrey," and I said, "Yes." And he said, did he tell you that I was his sponsor? I said, "Yeah, I think he did mention that." He said, "Well, I'm here to tell you I'm your sponsor now." I said, "Okay." He said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "Well, does it really matter?" He said, "No, it don't. So here's what I want you to do." And we took off. But he said, "Before I sponsor you," he said, "important question." He said, "The only way I'll sponsor you is under this one condition. If you continue to stay sober from the results of this, the deal is you pass it on and carry it on to somebody else." And I said, "Yes, I will." And he said, "Good, because I'm going to hold you to it." So we worked together, and me and him went through the steps together. And then things started changing. I started noticing that I didn't want to do harm to myself anymore. I stopped lying. I didn't lie nowhere near as much as I used to. No, it is about rigorous honesty, trust me. I went through the steps with Richard, and I remember the experience that I had in a closed room. Now here I was in prison, I'd been in prison at that time 3.5, 4 years. And we went in this room and doing the 3rd step. And I remember going in that closed room in the chapel there, and he got on his hands and knees, and he held his hand up, and he said, "Hold my hand, we're going to pray." And it was the first time in my life I've ever held hands with another man behind closed doors, on my hands and knees, and prayed. Now, in prison, that's something that you probably don't want to do. But I was willing to go to any length. I didn't care. And I knew there had to be something to it, because the evidence was through these guys. They were living proof that the program worked. And I had heard Tom's bits and pieces of his story. And I said, "Daggone, if he can do it, I'm too sure I can." You know. And I remember after going through the steps, Richard had told me, he's like, "You got anybody you working with now?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You got a sponsee?" I said, "No, hadn't thought about one." He said, "Well, good." He said, "No." He said, "What I want you to do is I want you to start praying for one, and praying for one now." And I did. I started praying for a sponsor. A couple days later, somebody come up to me and asked me to sponsor them. And I didn't think I could do it at the time. And Richard assured me that I could. He said, "You just share your experience." He said, "You take them through the steps precisely exactly how we went through the steps and through the big book." And that's what I did. And it was funny because the first guy who ever sponsored me was a black guy. And the institution where I was at, Morrison, was a STG facility. And it's kind of like they look upon you if different races mingle and correspond with each other. Trust me, I was feeling a type of way when me and him was holding hands in the wide open in the yard now, on our hands and knees with an AA Big Book doing a third step prayer. Now, I don't know about that guy, and I don't know where he's at tonight, but I know what it done for me. And it gave me a lot of hope. And it's been my experience doing things that I do not want to do is where I've made the most progress from. And I'd be lying if I told you I wanted to do that because fear set in. But I said, you know what? God's brought me this far, to be sure he ain't going to drop me on my head now. And I did. And ended up sponsoring a lot of guys there. Left from Morrison, went to, time flies. Went from Morrison to Burgaw, Pender Correctional, stayed there a couple of years, got involved, started sponsoring guys there, left from Pender, went to Wilmington, from Wilmington back to where I was born at in Pasquotank, left from there back to Wilmington and got released. Richard had passed away. Daniel became my sponsor. We took off right where me and Richard had left off at. It was suggested to me that the message of Alcoholics Anonymous could be carried through the mail as well as word of mouth. And we wrote letters each month on traditions. Me and Richard did for about 2 years. And when he passed, me and Daniel picked up right where me and Richard had left off, and we wrote for each other for quite a while until I could afford to make phone calls. At the time, the phone system had changed in prison, so I ended up calling Daniel, and right before I was released, I had made some other contacts with other guys in AA. A guy named Bill Priest, and he's passed away now. He became my sponsor then when I was released. And Bill was taking me out on CV passes. He took me to his home group, which is at the Crossroads group in Wilmington, May the 22nd of 2015. I walked out of that prison institution, I like to say a free man. But I was free way before I ever got there, because the day that I got honest with myself and told myself that I was an alcoholic, I was set free. And when I became willing to go to any lengths to get sober, I was set free. And the more I participated and followed the suggestions, the freer I became as going through the steps. But physically, I walked out of that institution a free man. And there was 3 people there. There was my sponsor, a first cousin of mine, and my daughter. And I went to a halfway house and stayed there about 3 weeks and had an opportunity to take a job. I took a job and worked there. I made a commitment for 2 years. I liked a couple of weeks from feeling that 2-year commitment. My home group, which was at the Crossroads from where I lived at, was about a 50-minute to an hour drive. My home group, we met there Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and my commitment was Saturdays and Sundays. And I don't think I ever missed a meeting that Saturday and Sunday the whole time, as long as I was home and I weren't traveling the whole time. And me and my sponsor, Bill, worked together, went to conferences, conventions, and so forth and so on. I ended up leaving the halfway house, renting a place with my cousin, and if I would have predicted and stated what I had my idea in my mind what was going to happen to me after I got released, I sold myself short. life today is a whole lot better than I could ever imagine. If I'd known sobriety had been this good, I would have tried a lot harder, a lot longer ago. I can assure you of that. And today I do service. I'm the alternate GSR for my home group. I have sponsees. I try to be of service to others as much as possible, and just basically do what I'm supposed to do, being responsible and being committed, and so forth and so on. And life's good today. I wouldn't trade my life today for anything what it used to be. Don't get me wrong, I had some good times drinking and doing all that stuff, but it's nothing like what it is for me today. And today I'm forever grateful to be here, and thank y'all again for allowing me to be here to speak, and thanks for letting me share.